Okay, what's going on? Wow, that's loud on my end. Hopefully, it's not on yours. Change of scenery. I am recording this in the new location of my baseball season in Ohio. So I'm in a hotel room. I just worked for 36 minutes on trying to just figure out the best lighting situation. So I know you guys care a lot about that. All right. We're going to be talking about pulling the arm into release. Okay, so you hear the term pushy arm action, which is probably more of the mainstream terminology in regards to arm action mechanics. So for those of you guys who are watching this coming from the eBook, obviously you'll see a ton of context on this. And as I referred to in the ebook, me personally, I see this 90% of the time as a byproduct of inefficient trunk rotation mechanics, or just the inability to segment, right? So we talk a lot about within this ebook the dynamic of segmentation and building rotational energy, and essentially having the arm take on as less load as possible by way of, essentially using the body, right? That's a broad terminology, but using the body's rotational energy. We talk about how, we're essentially creating this stretching the rubber band out as much as we can, anchoring down with the front foot, and then releasing all of that rotational energy while the arm gets pulled into release. So this is a really good screening here of two separate video angles, one from the front, one from the back. Or what? No, they're not. They're both from the front. Sorry. Left, Daniel Hudson. Right, Julio Urias. Hopefully I said that right. But this is going to be a good visualization to see this kind of sensation. Now, obviously, you won't be able to see the front foot anchoring down, which is a huge piece to this. I'll include more content on this dynamic and how the front foot plays a huge role in this, and how the mound can affect segmentation because you have more space to cover. But if you're watching this coming just straight from YouTube, I also have a lot of content on my YouTube channel as far as pushing the ball into release. I also have a video I'd encourage you guys to watch in terms of is it a pushy arm action or is it early trunk rotation, along with another video called Increase Arm Speed by just improving timing and sequencing. All right, so we're going to dive right into it. Again, we'll start with Daniel Hudson. I couldn't sync these up because one's slower than the other. But this is a really good representation for this dynamic. Let's say his front foot anchors down right there. Okay, so I love looking at guys' uniforms. I love looking at the jersey because you can kind of see the sensation of this rotational energy, this stretch within his jersey. By the way, it's kind of going like this, right? So if we were to see the bottom half of his lower body mechanics, you can see that his hips are into rotation, anchoring down, and now we have efficient arm action mechanics of positioning, elbow in line with shoulder. I talk about how I like to see in line or a little bit below, and the hand above elbow and shoulder inside 90. This is leverage. All right, we want to leverage our arm. We want to leverage our hand to the best of our ability. You can also see a extremely efficient equal opposite pattern with his glove side as he approaches that anchor point. Okay, so now he's going to anchor down, and now you can see this pulling sensation due to his ability to retract, rotate, anchor, and now pulling arm through as his trunk completes rotation. So to give you some more context on the entire system, okay, so the hips initiate the rotation first and then anchor down, not into complete rotation, but into rotation to allow gravity to complete the rotation of the hips, which then initiates the rotation of the trunk. Remember, well, for those of you guys coming from the ebook, we're going to talk about more specifically trunk rotation mechanics when we get to that chapter next, but we want to keep the trunk neutral. Okay, so you can see the same thing with Urias. All right, coming through, glove side, boom, and now hand gets up. We're going to say that that's at the point of which he's anchoring down. Okay, I like the Hudson view a little bit better because it shows more of his upper half. All right, but both guys in a very optimal position to leverage the arm, leverage the hand. Okay, use the body. There's a lot of major muscle groups, within the body that need to be utilized during this throw for multiple reasons. Okay, talk about the three goals of pitching mechanics. talk about the importance of velocity, command, and staying healthy. So especially with velocity and staying healthy is, I say this a lot, is like anyone can really just throw hard, right? But can you throw hard efficiently over a long period of time? This is why you guys see, individuals in the big leagues that can come out every single day and still produce that power output. That's why I always encourage, like, instead of just looking for velocity, look for effortless velocity, man. That's why that's how you know you're moving in the right direction. Okay. So, all right, pulling the arm into release, boom. Now, as the trunk initiates the rotation, the arm gets pulled through. This is what I say is like the release of this rotational energy, right? So we build up rotational energy through segmentation from the lower body to the upper body. Upper body stays neutral while the lower body is into rotation. You create the stretch, you anchor down, you release rotational energy or torque into this throw, all right? And now, obviously, I think submarine guys are going to be a little bit different towards this dynamic. But in terms of like arm angles over the top, high 3/4, sidearm, like, see these guys are both pretty different. High 3/4, maybe a low 3/4 guy. You still go about it the same way. All right. Pulling this arm into release, and you can really emphasize, the shoulder, a bigger muscle group within the body that can take on load, the lat, the pec, right? I talk about how when we do our drill progressions, and for those of you guys coming from the ebook, you're going to see a lot of progressions on this and how we want to go about this process of optimization by creating an environment that gives the athlete or gives you the feedback that we're looking for. Okay, so you're pulling this arm, you feel the lat being pulled through, or the pec pulling the arm through, and now you're coming into your ball release as the trunk is rotating. So obviously this video in particular isn't going to showcase like the pushing the ball into release. Ebook guys, we're going to show you context on the pushing, the screening, and all that in terms of what that looks like. But just to give you brief context on that, for guys that have that inability to segment, their timing, their sequencing is off. The trunk initiates its rotation early, and by early I just mean before that foot really anchors down. So what you can see is maybe like at this posture, right, where the trunk has already kind of started that rotation, that's when maybe the foot will anchor down. So you create this limited amount of rotational energy because of the inability to segment. So then instead of really maximizing that rubber band being pulled, you kind of ease in that tension, you let some tension out, and now that affects the arm action mechanics, because you can see instead of being in like a more of a retracted posture upon anchor point, you're already into rotation, which then forces the arm action mechanics to kind of just complete the rotation of the trunk, and then the arm just kind of gets pushed through. Everyone thinks this is something I don't believe in terms of what people think and what a pushy arm action is with leading with the elbow. You're going to lead with the elbow, right? We talk about, supination into pronation, the elbow spiral, all of these things. You're going to lead with the elbow. Like that's just the way you throw. But instead of the dynamic of thinking about throwing like darts, right, where you get like super close and then you really just push that dart into your release into the board. Instead of that, we want to create power, whereas guys that throw the darts, you're not really creating a whole lot of power. So in order to create power, you need leverage from the body. You need to create that segmentation. You need to pull the arm through. So in terms of like why this is all important, as I kind of hit on a little bit earlier, was the arm can generate like independent energy. Okay, so the arm, this happens all the time. Guys have a strong arm. They can throw, they can like throw far in a throw variation, like in a long toss throw variation where they're just like tall kneeling and, they're just kind of reaching back and throwing, or, they're doing like half kneeling throw variations or whatever, and they can still induce high power output because they just have a strong arm, right? Like some guys are just built differently. So what happens is, in terms of the danger of that, is they're reliant upon this generation of this independent energy with just their throwing arm, and they kind of bypass a lot of these like I said, major muscle groups that are built to take on a good amount of load and take on a good amount of stress. So now what happens over time, the more you throw hard and the more volume and all of that, the elbow, the arm, those little tiny muscles, those little tiny ligaments can only take so much brunt force until it just breaks down. That's why it's a good indicator of guys, even maybe not so much in the little league level, but at the youth level, you see a lot of velocity kind of ebbs and flows. One day their velocity will be really good. The next day they throw, it's like down 6 miles an hour. And that's, I think, for me, looking at that, that's a direct correlation to, over time, it's just going to wear down. It's going to be succumb to fatigue because of the amount of energy you're having to independently generate just with your arm. So not only is this dynamic of pulling the arm into release and leveraging the arm not only is it important for velocity development, but it's important for staying healthy and being able to throw, So that's what I got. Pulling the arm into release. I know I talked a lot more than just kind of showing you guys this visual, but I think it always kind of helps seeing the efficient visual of this pattern. Watch any guy in the big leagues. Watch any guy that throws at high power output. Watch any starter, because starters more specifically have to do this or else they can't go every fifth day for 200 plus innings, right? Watch any starter and you're going to see very, very optimal throwing mechanics about, not just this leverage aspect, but, putting your body into right positions, putting the hand into right positions, putting the arm into the right position at the right time to, have the body take on more load, more stress, and not putting that stress on these little ligaments within the elbow that are prone to break down over time. So now obviously the big question is like, okay, well then how do we get there? And how can I kind of sequence like that? Cause it can all vary. First and foremost, I think looking at it, it's a segmentation thing that we can address. Is it the mound? Is it the timing aspect of it? I talk about all the time how just the pitching mechanics in general is just timing and positioning. That's really what it comes down to. Now, we don't want to overemphasize timing and positioning so much that now we're creating these robots that just kind of like think about that to where they're just like, okay, sequence, move here to point A to point B to point C, and you take away that natural freedom, that natural athleticism. But at the same time, we do need to get to these patterns, and to get to these patterns for me, guys watching this from the ebook, I've talked a lot about hand path simplicity and connection, right? This is a direct correlation to being connected. Now, if you're connected, you're going to have a much better opportunity to leverage the arm, to pull the arm through. If you're disconnected, now your body's moving at essentially one tempo where your arm is moving at a different tempo. I do a lot of stuff on the tempo of the hands and the feet, because in reality, those are the two most important pieces in terms of timing and positioning, right? We can't have disconnected tempo of the throwing hand and the anchor foot, because when that anchor foot comes down, like now we got to go. So if the anchor foot comes down and the hand's not in that position, then we're fighting a very, very high, steep uphill battle. This is actually another good visualization. I think Daniel Hudson is maybe a surgery guy, right? Maybe a Tommy John somewhere. Not saying that this is why, but everyone talks about like the inverted elbow or inverted W, and this could be a correlation to that. For me personally, I look at the inverted W more so as an arm drag type thing when the front foot is anchored down. So you can see how this works. The elbows kind of pull in, right there. So now I'm going to assume he's anchoring down right about here. So now that's where we get this, right? We're in line here. Same with Urias, right? See how that elbow retracts? Don't get that mistaken. Now his elbow doesn't climb as much, but don't get that mistaken for like, oh, that's bad. Look more so towards the point of which he anchors down, because that's when all things are going to happen. You're still moving through space, and you're still moving through space during this time. So that's another thing to look at. Boom, anchoring down. He's got a wide wide fingers there. Be interesting to look at his spin rate. Might be low. Who knows? Throws fuzz. But yeah, that's what I got. Ebook guys, we'll obviously dive more into some breakdown screenings, and some progressions. But like I said earlier, the biggest thing to go about in terms of optimizing this is if you're somebody or working with somebody that drastically struggles with this, is you want to manipulate the environment or the sensation to create that feedback of pulling the arm through. Got a lot of videos on YouTube about that. So once you can create the feedback of getting the arm being pulled through, then your brain essentially can download that information, download that feedback to then replicate that when you're going at full speed. But yeah, as I mentioned, more oftentimes than not, it's a segmentation breakdown, but the other, say like 10% of the time where it's actually just a pushy arm action, they could be a multitude of things where guys, maybe get so fixated on throwing the ball where they want, and they, do that dart throw where they drastically rotate early and they lead with that elbow, and which over time gets instilled as that just the arm action mechanics itself are, really pushy. I see, a lot of times with younger kids or even kids that have struggled, say with like the yips, struggle with throwing the ball where they want. They get so fixated on the command aspect that it's almost a double negative, where they, instead of going about it efficiently and powerfully, which actually induces a more higher probability of commanding the baseball, they get real passive with their arm action, and their trunk actually just goes early. Or the other dynamic we talked about, like the early arm raise, getting that arm up relatively early within the sequencing pattern of the arm action mechanics, and then you anchor down, say here again, where the trunk has already kind of initiated that rotation, and you just succumb to this pushy arm action. So the why isn't necessarily like the biggest thing to take note of and to kind of figure out, because it matters very little. The why, I guess it matters in terms of is it segmentation or is it the arm action itself? That identification is important, if you ask me. But in terms of like why it happened in the first place, it doesn't really matter, because it's happening and we got to fix it. Right now, you fix it by establishing, like I said, the environment, manipulating the environment to create the feedback. But you also have to have freedom. Talk about that all the time. Freedom within the arm action mechanics. We'll dive into within the ebook how freedom plays into also the efficient deceleration pattern as well. And there's also the freedom aspect of like the mental side of it, right? I talk about mental restriction leading to physical restriction, which can get you, again, going back to like, in between the years, about guys that can't throw strikes. So they have a coach that's saying, just throw strikes. You restrict them from a mental aspect that leads into the physical restriction. And now you're not able to sequence efficiently because you're trying to consciously feel so many different things. And you start moving like a robot. So that's pulling the arm into release and essentially just leveraging the arm and allowing the body to do what it needs to do, in terms of, protecting the arm and producing as high a power output as possible. That's why I'm a big believer with a lot of guys is like, dude, just go out and throw the ball as far as you can and watch what your body does in terms of sequencing. It's fantastic. It's amazing. You create the environment that's forcing freedom, and you take away the task of like, I got to throw it there, and you go out and just let it eat and watch the sequencing. The body knows how to sequence for athletes. For a lot of athletes, man, we know how to sequence powerfully. And you just need to kind of find the right environment that allows you to do that, and then hammer as many repetitions as possible to create the motor pattern and have that carry over when you do step on the mound. All right. So that is pulling, not pushing. All right. Pulling the arm into release, leveraging the arm. As always, much love, guys. God bless. And hopefully I can get this dang book done before we get into the thick of the season. All right. Love you guys. Talk to you next time.